Yep.
A fire is burning out of control in the Pacific Palisades neighborhood of Los Angeles, and that fast-moving fire is being fueled by a windstorm that has produced gusts of 50 to 70 miles per hour. As of right now, the fire has already burned more than 1,300 acres of land, but the wind speed is expected to peak tonight between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. local time, so there is real and significant fear that this fire could continue to spread and spread rapidly. Around 30,000 residents of the Pacific Palisades and the surrounding areas have already been evacuated. One resident told the LA Times the fire was moving so quickly that police started yelling for people to abandon their cars and telling residents to run for your lives. The LA Times is also reporting that firefighters could be heard telling dispatchers over the radio that as many as 100 abandoned vehicles were blocking the road. You can see right here that authorities had to use a bulldozer to move the parked cars out of the way in order to let the firefighters through. Right now, there are no reports of injuries or deaths, but several structures have been destroyed and the fire is continuing to grow. Joining me now is Chase Kane, who's an NBC News national climate reporter in the Pacific Palisades. Chase, thank you for doing this reporting. I know you're right in harm's way here. Can you give us a sense of what the situation is like at this hour?
Alex, the scene that you were just describing, where people were literally abandoning their cars in the road, that's Sunset Boulevard, which is just behind me here. I know it's a bit of a black hole. There's not a lot to see because they've turned off power. But that road that you're looking at is Sunset Boulevard. And then you might be able to see just on the horizon that it looks like fire, some embers may have kicked back up and started a fire again. I was actually with my producer trying to make our way down here to where we are now when the road just became gridlock. In one direction, it was people trying to evacuate from their homes. In the other direction, it was people trying to get to their homes. And once we got a little closer, we realized that was the scene, that the fire had come down the side of the hill along Sunset Boulevard, the famous Sunset Boulevard that people know all across the country. And yeah, police and firefighters were telling people, listen, either stay in your car or at some point get out of your car. So we saw people walking up the sidewalk, people evacuating their homes, Alex, pulling suitcases down the street, other people just carrying what they could under their arms. It's been a heartbreaking situation. I mean, I've covered dozens of wildfires. I've lived in Los Angeles for a while. I've never seen a wildfire that has moved this quickly and in such a densely populated area. I mean, the fact that at least no residents have been injured is certainly a miracle, although within just the last few minutes, there was a firefighter that was injured and was met by an ambulance here just behind me. It seemed like he's okay. It did not seem like it was going to be anything too serious. But, you know, these folks are out here risking their lives. As I just heard, I don't know if you can hear that on the microphone, another pop. It's probably another transformer up on the ridge line that you're seeing there. We've seen people earlier, Alex, with flashlights likely going through. That's like a couple of like apartment and condo buildings that are on the hillside. We've seen people going through with flashlights trying to make sure no one is in there as police and fire continue to sweep this area, making sure everyone is out of harm's way, as they're also just doing what they can, because it's almost impossible to fight or contain a fire when you have winds that are 50, 60, 70 miles an hour overnight, Alex, maybe gusting up to 80 or 100. That's a hurricane force wind gust.
Yeah, I mean, the speed with which this has intensified is just staggering. I think earlier today at like 10:30 a.m. California time, there were just a few acres burning. By this afternoon, it's 1,200 acres. I would imagine the rapid spread of this has led to some of that chaos with people abandoning their cars, being told to run for their lives. Can you tell us what the evacuation process is like right now and how wide the evacuation area is, given what you said, the wind gusts of anywhere from between 50 to 100 miles per hour that are expected tonight?
At least 30,000 people have been told to evacuate, Alex. I know it's kind of hard to tell because it just probably seems like we're in this dark place, but we're right near Santa Monica as these winds pick up and howl again. I mean, Santa Monica would typically be within eyesight of the famous pier and Ferris wheel that so many people know. Malibu is maybe just a mile up the road to the left side of your screen from where we are. This is a really densely populated area, and we're calling it the Palisades fire, but it's not just one fire burning contained. It's actually lots of little fires, because with wind like this, I mean, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to understand how it grabs one ember, and whatever that ember hits is going to catch on fire. It might be a tree, it might be brush, it might be a car parked on Sunset, which I saw. It was also houses up here on the ridgeline, at least a couple dozen homes. It's really hard for them to get a handle on exactly how bad the damage is, because this is just developing so rapidly, devolving so rapidly, I should say, Alex.
Chase Kane, our NBC News national climate reporter. Chase, please stay safe. Thank you for that excellent reporting. You are indispensable in moments like this. I'm going to go now to NBC News national correspondent Jacob Soboroff, who's also in Pacific Palisades. Jacob, I know this is your hometown, and I know Californians are used to wildfires. It's something that the governor has referred to not as wildfire season, but wildfire years in the state of California. This seems like a different order of magnitude entirely. Can you talk to me about what you're experiencing?
Well said, Alex. It seems like we're in some kind of permanent state of wildfire season in Southern California, but not like this. Not like this. This is Pacific Palisades, California. As you mentioned, it also happens to be the place that I was born and raised, up over that ridge right there. You are watching Will Rogers State Historic Park burn, and on the other side of that ridge is Palisades Village, where it's the center of the community of 23 or so thousand people who live and work and play in this very beautiful part of the city of Los Angeles. It's a community with multiple schools, restaurants, thousands and thousands of homes, and where the fire started this morning up near the Palisades Highlands, there are very few ways in and out, and that's why you heard about the cars being jammed up, people having a hard time getting out. Those bulldozers that you saw in those images earlier this evening pushing cars out of the way here on Sunset Boulevard. For people who have ever been to Los Angeles, where I'm standing right now is in between the Brentwood portion of Los Angeles and where the Palisades Village is. If you continue through the Palisades Village, you get down to the corner of Sunset and Pacific Coast Highway, which is where that staging area is, where Governor Newsom briefed the assembled media earlier tonight and made those remarks that you just mentioned. I just actually saw for the first time, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, guys, maybe embers coming in this direction because the wind continues to shift, Alex. The wind is going essentially in a southwesterly direction from where I'm standing right now. Let's just show Alex real quick. We've got another emergency service vehicle coming through right now. This is probably the 10th or 11th one that I've seen so far. That one is from Engine 71, Los Angeles City Fire paramedic. But this is not just LA City Fire that is on this, Alex. This is a mutual aid type of situation. I've seen Los Angeles County firefighters out here, City of Santa Monica law enforcement personnel. As I mentioned to Chris Hayes in the last hour, the Los Angeles Police Department, thousands of officers strong, is on a citywide tactical alert tonight. You hear about that sometimes in volatile situations involving, protests and things like that. But not usually for a wildfire of this nature. And when I say it's different, that is because we're used to wildfires out in places like Malibu or in Malibu Canyon where, and I don't want to minimize it, homes are destroyed and people's lives are upended and sometimes ended, but not in a place where there's tens of thousands of people living in Los Angeles. Never in my lifetime can I remember standing in Pacific Palisades and having the entire community evacuated as much of this part of Los Angeles burns tonight. Tomorrow morning is going to be a bleak scene here, and we haven't even seen the beginning of it, with winds expected to reach those peaks later tonight here, Alex.
Jacob, give me a sense of what it is like to be in the greater Los Angeles area right now, because we're hearing reports of absolute chaos in evacuated areas, people abandoning their cars abandoned on the road, bulldozed out of the way so firefighters can pass, people being told by police and first responders to run for their lives. I understand that's probably at the center of all of this, but in the surrounding areas, and not just Malibu, but in Santa Monica and in LA Central. I mean, can you talk about the level of fear, the level of panic, the sort of evacuations? And I know, you're just on the scene right now. Anecdotally speaking, set the scene for us if you could.
The road here was like, dry. How do you describe one way on the Los Angeles freeway completely gridlocked, the 405 northbound and the 405 southbound, coming from our NBC News headquarters at Universal Studios, was completely wide open. Not a soul was driving in the direction, seemed like, that we were coming to make our way here to the west side of LA. People are going as far as they can, as fast as they can, away from this part of town. And when you heard about the scenes earlier today that resulted in those cars being abandoned on the roads, it's because of the bottleneck created by the developments in places like the Palisades Highlands or at the top of streets like Bienvenido, where I lived as a young guy growing up here in Los Angeles, where there are very few ways out. There are fire roads, but those fire roads too become gridlocked or sometimes impassable. And so what people did at the beginning of this firestorm, and I think that's the only way to describe it, is to get out of their cars in places like Sunset Boulevard, outside of places like Kehillat Israel Temple, in the middle of Pacific Palisades, and just start walking, because it's a terrifying sight to behold. To stand here and to watch this, I don't quite have the words to describe to you what it's like to be standing here in this part. It's called the Palisades Riviera, and looking back at Will Rogers Park, and knowing that that's just a small portion of the fire that's burning here tonight. And it continues. When I got to this location, Alex, and we arrived here, at this part of the scene, that was a small fire that was just starting to burn. And over the course of the last hour or so that I've stood here, it has just exploded, and it seems to be exploding in all directions, which is why I said in the last hour, Chris, if there's anybody at home watching MSNBC right now, and you live in Pacific Palisades or in any of the places where there's a mandatory evacuation, get up and get out of your house and get on the road right now, because if you're inside, you're not feeling these winds right now, and you can probably see they are blowing like we don't often experience. We know the Santa Ana winds here that come in over those mountains and go out towards the coast, but this place is like a tinderbox right now.
Jacob, you're doing some essential reporting, my friend. I think it's probably made all the more complicated that this is your hometown and you grew up in Pacific Palisades. So our thoughts are with you, brother. Stay strong, and thank you for doing what you do.
Thanks, my friend.